Welcome to the Cheating Wife Stories channel. Andrew Carter's life seemed like the picture of success. Raised in a close-knit, supportive family, he had always been a hard worker, excelling in school and later in business. His father, a self-made entrepreneur, taught him the value of discipline and integrity. Values Andrew carried into adulthood. A business degree from a reputable university, coupled with his natural acumen, positioned him for a promising career in the family's flourishing tire company. Andrew wasn't just ambitious. He was a man of principle, intent on creating a life filled with purpose and stability. Emily Davis had always been charming and ambitious, qualities that had initially drawn Andrew to her. She came from a modest background but had grand aspirations. Her determination to rise above her circumstances fueled her drive, both in her career and personal life. By the time she met Andrew at university, Emily had already mapped out her path to success with real estate as her chosen field. She and Andrew quickly became inseparable, their shared drive for achievement seemingly the perfect foundation for a life together. Their relationship blossomed, leading to a whirlwind romance that culminated in marriage. They bought their first home, a modest but comfortable house, within 2 years of graduating. Emily quickly established herself as a rising star in real estate, while Andrew managed the accounting department of his father's business. Together, they epitomized the power couple, blending their professional successes with an apparent devotion to one another. Over time, cracks began to appear in their seemingly perfect life. Emily's growing success in real estate introduced her to a high-paced, glamorous world that often pulled her away from Andrew. Her long work hours, coupled with late-night client meetings, began creating distance in their relationship. Despite Andrew's attempts to bridge the gap, their once solid bond began to erode, setting the stage for the turmoil to come. Andrew Carter reclined on the sofa, engrossed in his phone, when a call from his wife interrupted him. Emily's trembling voice instantly filled him with dread. Just hours earlier, a private investigator had revealed unsettling news. Emily and a man she had secretly been seeing were boarding a flight to Maui for a week-long getaway. The betrayal stung deeply, adding another layer of deceit to the mounting web of lies that had slowly unraveled their marriage. Emily couldn't shake the gnawing question of how he had overlooked the signs, even after years spent building a life together. He sighed, took a sip of his coffee, and leaned back in his chair, reflecting on the past decade. Andrew and Emily had met 13 years ago in college while studying business. They had quickly fallen in love, married, and built a life together. Andrew had joined his father's successful tire business, eventually taking over the accounting department, while Emily thrived in real estate. They had a nice home, new cars, and seemed to have it all, except for children. Emily had told him her fallopian tubes were tied, and when Andrew suggested adoption, she dismissed the idea. Over time, he accepted they would remain childless, but recently things had felt off. Emily began spending more time out with friends, going from occasional happy hours to multiple late nights a week. Andrew voiced his concerns, but Emily dismissed them, claiming work stress was to blame. One night, after a particularly late return, smelling of cigarette smoke, he confronted her. She insisted it was just drinks and dancing, but Andrew knew something wasn't right. She apologized, but the tension lingered. Over the next few months, their closeness faded. What had been regular connections now dwindled to once every 2 weeks. Emily seemed more distant, no longer asking about Andrew's day or showing interest in his life. Then, Andrew caught her in a lie. He had dropped by her office to surprise her for lunch, only to learn she had already left. That evening, she claimed she had been at the office all day. He didn't confront her, but the lie stung. It made him wonder how many other times she had deceived him. Later, as they lay in bed, Andrew confessed his worries about their relationship. Emily reassured him, but the doubt remained. Their connection felt strained, and Andrew wasn't sure he could believe her anymore. She promised to show him she still loved him, but he wasn't convinced. That night, they made love, And while Andrew felt a bit reassured, something still didn't feel right. Over the next month, things seemed better, but the distance returned. He kept wondering, what's happening to us? The truth began to surface when his old friend Samuel Parker called, asking to meet. "Sure, I'm up for a beer," Andrew said. "What's going on?" "It's hard to explain over the phone," Samuel replied urgently. "But it's important." Andrew agreed to meet Samuel at the bar. That evening, he was surprised to find Emily home early, as she usually stayed out later. At the bar, Samuel didn't waste any time. "I saw your wife today while I was jogging," he said, leaning in. Andrew looked up, intrigued. "Really?" "Yeah, I didn't know she was into holding hands and kissing clients." Andrew frowned. "What are you talking about?" Samuel's expression grew serious. "I wish I were joking. I saw Emily with some guy on River Road. They were kissing and all over each other." Andrew's heart dropped. "No way. Are you sure it was her?" Samuel asked, showing Andrew a photo. It was Emily. Andrew stared, stunned. "Can you send me that?" Samuel quickly sent the photo. "So what now?" Andrew was lost for words. "I don't know, man. This is way more than I expected." Samuel suggested a private investigator. "I can hook you up if you want." "Do it," Andrew replied. "I need answers." Afterward, Andrew returned home, where Emily was already in the kitchen. "You're home early," he said, kissing her, not complaining, just surprised. She kissed him back, smiling. "Where were you?" "Having a beer with Samuel," Andrew said. "Didn't think you'd be home yet. Everything okay with him?" she asked. "Not exactly," Andrew replied. "I found out my friend's wife is cheating." Emily's interest piqued. "Really?" "Yeah," Andrew said, trying to gauge her reaction. "I saw her kissing a guy today." Emily briefly flinched but quickly recovered. "Maybe he's mistaken." Andrew stared at her, unsure. "I'm just glad I don't have that problem." She relaxed. "I'd be devastated if that happened to me." Andrew, feeling uneasy, kissed her forehead. "I'm glad to hear that. I love you," Emily whispered, pulling him close. Andrew sensed the tension but chose not to confront her yet. He wasn't ready. "So, why are you home so early?" he asked, changing the subject. "The conference is this weekend," she replied brightly. "I thought I'd pack and spend time with you before I leave." "Where's the conference this year?" Andrew asked, feigning casual interest. "Atlantic City," she said, "at the Harborview Hotel. I've heard it's nice. 4 stars, right?" "Yeah," she smiled. "I'm really looking forward to it. But we do get some free time too." "When do you leave?" Andrew asked, trying to figure out their time together. "Friday, right after lunch," she said. "Did you win another award this year?" Andrew asked, knowing how successful she was. "I think so," she shrugged. "They haven't announced it, but I'm pretty sure." They kissed again, but Andrew's mind stayed on edge. Her behavior had been off lately, and he couldn't shake the suspicion that she was hiding something. "Why don't I walk you upstairs and congratulate you on another great year?" Andrew suggested, pushing his doubts aside for now. She smiled, taking his hand. "I was wondering when you'd offer," she teased. That evening, they were intimate, but Andrew couldn't shake his growing suspicions. Was she planning something while away this weekend? He wondered if the conference would be the turning point. "Hey, I got some time off coming up," Andrew said, trying to lighten the mood. "Why don't I come with you to Atlantic City? We could relax and maybe reconnect. Our 10th anniversary is coming up," he added, hoping to salvage something. "That sounds fun," Emily replied. "But I'll be busy with seminars and work afterward." Andrew felt disappointed, but hid it. "All right, maybe we can celebrate when you get back. I'll miss you," she smiled. The next morning, Andrew contacted Samuel for the private investigator's details. After setting up a meeting, he went to meet the investigator before lunch. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," greeted Jerry, the investigator, a middle-aged man with a weathered face. Andrew explained his concerns about Emily's Atlantic City trip. Atlantic City, huh? Jerry raised an eyebrow. You think she's meeting someone? I'm not sure, Andrew admitted. I've got some contacts there, Jerry said. We can keep an eye on her. If you want, we can even plant a camera in her hotel room. But that'll cost extra. I need to know the truth, Andrew replied calmly. Jerry handed him a voice-activated recorder, instructing him to place it under her car seat. When she drives off, turn it on. We'll handle the rest. Good, Andrew said, taking the recorder and a contact number. He paid with money he had saved for a vacation. Money now redirected for another purpose. Later, Emily finished packing and Andrew helped her with the bags. That's a lot of stuff for a weekend, he remarked, noticing the packed bags. Curious, he opened one and found a container of birth control pills. Only 10 left. Wait, didn't you say your tubes were tied? His mind raced. Then he found a mix of business clothes, tiny clubbing dresses, and delicate lingerie. One bikini was so revealing it had only ever been seen online. Andrew took photos with his phone. Later, he placed the recorder under her car seat and watched her drive away. This could be the last time we're together, he thought. At breakfast the next morning, Emily handed him her room number and promised to call each night. I love you, she said, kissing his cheek. I love you too, Andrew, he replied, his mind elsewhere. He gave her the room number and called Jerry. I'll get to work on it, Jerry assured him. Later, Emily called from the airport. I'll check in once I'm settled. Thanks, Andrew replied, his voice strained. I love you, she said, and he couldn't help but think, yeah, I miss you too, lying to my face. But he only said, I'll miss you too. When he looked up, his father stood in the doorway, concern in his eyes. You okay, son? His father asked. Andrew sighed. I don't know, Dad. His father nodded and led him to the study. Andrew explained everything he had uncovered. That doesn't sound like her at all, his father said, disbelief in his voice. I can't imagine Emily doing this. Neither can I, Andrew muttered. If you need anything, we're here for you, his father reassured him. Thanks, Dad, Andrew said, grateful for his support. Later that afternoon, Andrew left work early and headed to the airport to track down Emily's car. He found it parked in the short-term lot and retrieved the recorder. The car was exactly as he expected, clean and organized, just like Emily always kept it. On the drive home, his phone rang. Hey, baby, Emily's voice chirped. Just wanted to let you know I made it. I'm glad to hear it, Andrew said, his tone steady. I'm getting settled in. I'll call you tonight. Love you. I love you too, he replied, though his heart wasn't in it. When he got home, he plugged in the audio recorder, hoping for silence. But halfway through, his world tilted on its axis. He could hear Emily's phone ring through the car's Bluetooth. The conversation was clear. Hey, baby, a man's voice said. Hello, Stallion. Emily responded with a flirtatious giggle. You're such a stud. Andrew's heart dropped. What the heck is going on? He thought, stunned. I can't wait to see you again, the man continued. Last week was amazing. Next week? Andrew muttered in shock. Yeah, it's all set, the man replied. Did you tell your husband? Not yet, she said, sounding too calm. Don't worry, I've got it all under control. He doesn't know anything, right? Nope, Emily said, the words sending a chill down his spine. He's too oblivious. I can tell him anything and he'll believe it. Andrew's hands clenched around the recorder, his thoughts spinning. She's planning something next week, and I'm not involved. This is the week of our 10th anniversary. The man's voice interrupted his thoughts. I'm almost at the airport now. I'll see you at the hotel tonight, okay? I can't wait, Emily replied, excitement in her voice. Andrew sat motionless, staring at the recorder in disbelief. He played it again, hoping it was a mistake. But no, it was as clear as day. She was having an affair, and it wasn't a one-time thing. She was even planning something for their anniversary week. How long has this been happening? Who is this guy? He grabbed a beer from the fridge and slumped into his chair, trying to make sense of it all. Had he really been so blind to the signs? What else had she hidden from him? He had always respected Emily's privacy, but now everything had changed. He knew where she kept the key to her office, so he went to the bedroom and found it in a drawer in her jewelry box. With a sense of entitlement he had never felt before, he unlocked her desk and began to sift through the papers inside. He was shocked by what he found. Among the documents were bank statements. Emily had been saving far more than she ever admitted. She had over $250,000 hidden away. And it wasn't just money. It was the purchases that told a story. A receipt for a men's Rolex watch. Andrew didn't remember ever receiving something like that. But maybe her lover did. She had also bought delicate lingerie items he'd never seen before, but it didn't stop there. Buried beneath the receipts was something that hit him like a ton of bricks. Medical bills from Planned Parenthood. Emily had been pregnant twice in the last 2 years and had terminated both pregnancies, paying cash out of her personal account. Andrew's stomach churned. Had one of those pregnancies been his? Then he found the receipt for emergency contraceptive pills, purchased just a few days earlier after one of their intimate nights. The final nail in the coffin came when he found a receipt for a large down payment on an apartment in an upscale neighborhood. Was she planning to move out? Or was this where she and her lover would escape to? Andrew's mind raced. He examined the keys on her key ring, wondering if one was for the apartment. He would find out soon enough. He powered on her computer, determined to uncover whatever else she was hiding. The passwords list was his next target. Andrew accessed Emily's computer and easily logged into her email. Scrolling through, he quickly discovered several messages from Stephen Morgan that detailed their encounters. Emily's responses were almost identical each time. The emails, some nearly a year old, lined up with the period when Andrew had first noticed changes in her behavior. Initially, their meetings had been in hotel rooms, but it seemed they'd later moved their trysts to houses Emily was selling. Then, Andrew found an email from about 6 months ago that gave him a partial answer to a question that had been bothering him. "Did you take care of that little issue?" Stephen had asked. "Yes," Emily replied. "I went and had a procedure today." "Too bad you didn't keep him," Stephen responded. "You could have passed him off as Andrew's." "I can't do that," Emily replied. "He thinks I can't have children. He'd know it wasn't his." Andrew's mind raced. He remembered that conversation. "She's been lying to me for months," he thought, his anger boiling. What a deceitful, manipulative person. The emails kept coming. At one point, Stephen suggested they have meetings in Emily's marital bed, but Emily shot down the idea. "I won't do that to Andrew," she wrote. Stephen persisted. "That idiot doesn't have a clue, does he?" "No," Emily responded. "I'm not doing that." Stephen then proposed an idea. "What if you had your own apartment? You could use the commissions to pay for a place, and Andrew would never notice." Emily seemed to entertain the thought. "You might be on to something," she replied. "I have my own account, and Andrew never asks about it. I'll see what's available." That had been about 3 months ago. The receipt for the apartment down payment was just over a month old. "I bought a condo," she emailed him. "I made the down payment, and new furniture is coming next week. Andrew doesn't know anything." Stephen's reply was enthusiastic. "Perfect, we'll have to break in every room." Andrew leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen in disbelief. The whole situation was beyond what he could have imagined. He kept reading. Stephen eventually asked, "Why stay with your husband? Why not just leave him and move in with me?" "I still have feelings for him," Emily responded. "He's a pain, but he treats me well. I bought the condo so we have a private place to meet without worrying about hotel rooms. Besides, you're still married. Stephen then promised he'd leave his wife in a heartbeat if Emily asked him to. We'll see after the conference, Emily said. Andrew froze. What conference? He thought, a sick feeling in his stomach. He was about to print the emails and save the receipts when the phone rang. It was Emily. Hey, baby, she said sweetly. How's everything? You sound off. I've got a terrible headache, Andrew said, trying to keep his cool. I just wanted to let you know I'm getting ready for bed. Take something for your headache and get some rest. I love you. Yeah, me too, Andrew muttered, hanging up quickly. He clenched his fist. She has no idea how close I am to exposing her. After the call, Andrew decided he needed to find out more about this Stephen guy. A quick search on Emily's work website revealed that Stephen Morgan was her regional manager, so she was having an affair with her boss. Andrew printed the page, adding it to the pile of evidence, but he couldn't calm down. He needed answers, and he was going to find them. He checked the address for Emily's new condo and found a series of numbers listed under alarm system in her paperwork. Of course, she wrote it down, he thought, grabbing latex gloves from the garage. He wasn't leaving any trace. He found the apartment complex easily and parked in her spot. With gloves on, he tried the key that matched and stepped inside. He quickly disabled the alarm using the code he had found. The place was well decorated, and Andrew had to admit, Emily had good taste. Too bad her loyalty wasn't as strong as her design skills, he muttered. Of course, there were no photos of him. This was clearly her getaway, a place to escape their marriage. As he wandered through, he noted that there was nothing in the fridge and the pantry was empty. The apartment was furnished with sleek modern pieces, and the living room had a large flat-screen TV. When he entered the bedroom, he immediately noticed the lace curtains she loved hanging elegantly down to the floor. He glanced down, noticing that the curtains were hanging over the electric heater, and wondered if she had ever considered the fire risk. He opened the dresser drawers, finding lingerie he had never seen, as well as men's underwear. He took pictures with his phone, documenting everything. In the nightstand he found a card from Stephen. It read, "Thanks for the watch. Can't wait for your housewarming party. Love, Stephen." Fury surged through him. He took a few more pictures, including shots of the toothbrushes in the bathroom, and the towels for him, and for her on the rack. This was a full-fledged affair. In the second bedroom, there was a desk with some utility bills addressed to Emily. Andrew photographed them, noting the address. The windows here were also covered with lace curtains, again hanging over the heater, a fire hazard. He also spotted safety issues, a very old smoke detector in the kitchen, and none in the bedrooms. He made sure everything was exactly as it had been when he entered. Once he finished, he reactivated the security system, locked the door, and left. He sat in his car for a while, reflecting on what he had just uncovered. Divorce seemed inevitable now. Even if Emily ended things with Stephen and sold the condo, he could never trust her again. Financially, he knew men often lost in divorce settlements, but he had an advantage. Emily made far more money than he did, and he hoped that would help him avoid paying alimony. He planned to consult a lawyer before making any moves, hoping the fact that the condo was only in Emily's name would mean he wouldn't have to sell their house or split it. She had already made it clear that she was no longer committed to their marriage when she secretly bought the condo. No kids meant no custody battles, but Andrew still wanted to make sure Emily and Stephen faced consequences for their betrayal. Andrew had ruled out violence. He didn't want to end up in jail. Back at his place, he looked up Stephen Morgan in the phone book, hoping it was the same Stephen. After dialing the number, a woman's voice answered. "Global Realty Residence," she said. "Is this Mrs. Morgan?" Andrew asked. "Yes, it is." "Who am I speaking with?" He pressed. "My name is Andrew Carter," he said. "Your husband is the regional manager at Global Realty." "Yes, he is," she answered. "But he's at a conference this weekend and will be visiting other offices next week. You'll need to contact the regional office and leave a message there. Actually, Mrs. Morgan, I'm hoping to speak with you, Andrew said. Oh, she responded, sounding surprised. Yes, Mom. Andrew continued. I'm afraid I have some bad news. My wife is having an affair with your husband. Are you sure about that? She asked, clearly taken aback. I'm certain, Andrew said, and I can prove it. Do you have solid evidence? She inquired. I can even show you where they meet if you'd like, Andrew offered. He could hear her sigh on the other end. Would tomorrow work? She asked after a pause. Sure, Andrew replied. What time is good for you? Let's say 1 p.m., she suggested. Andrew gave her the address to Emily's apartment and offered clear directions. I'll see you then, he said, ending the call with a sense of satisfaction. Once the conversation was over, he sat at his desk and made a to-do list. The first item was clear: change the locks. He planned to get that done before meeting Stephen's wife. Though he briefly considered getting drunk, he quickly pushed the thought aside. He grabbed a cold slice of pizza instead, using the time to mentally prepare for what lay ahead. Once finished, he climbed the stairs to bed. The next morning, Andrew woke up early, headed to the hardware store, and bought everything he needed to change the locks, as well as a copy of the key to the apartment. By noon, the locks were all replaced. After a quick shower, he grabbed his audio recorder and the printed emails from Emily's account. He was ready to meet Stephen's wife. Upon arriving at Emily's apartment, he noticed a woman in a Toyota Corolla nearby. He approached the car and knocked on the window. Are you Olivia Brown? He asked. She nodded. Yes. You must be Andrew Carter, she replied. Yep, that's me, he said, opening the car door for her. Come with me, and I'll show you where they've been meeting. Just put these on first, Andrew added, handing her a pair of latex gloves. I don't want any fingerprints left behind. Good idea, she agreed, slipping the gloves on. They walked toward the door, and Andrew used the new key to open it. The security alarm deactivated as they stepped inside. Andrew led her through the apartment, opening drawers and a closet to reveal Stephen's clothes. Oh my goodness, Olivia gasped, her voice trembling. I've been looking for these clothes for weeks. I had no idea where they were disappearing to. Has he been wearing a Rolex lately? Andrew asked. Olivia nodded. Yes, he said it was a gift from his company. Andrew shook his head and pulled out a card from Emily's nightstand. He opened it and showed it to her. Olivia read the note, her eyes welling up with tears. Is this his handwriting? Andrew asked. Yes, Olivia sobbed. Andrew then pulled out the printed emails, turned on the recorder, and played the audio from the previous Friday. I'm sorry about all of this, Andrew said, offering her a sympathetic hug. She wiped her tears. It's not your fault, she replied. I suspected something was going on, but I didn't have any concrete proof. After a while, Olivia regained some composure and asked, So, what's your plan? I'm divorcing her, Andrew said bluntly. Are you? Olivia asked, her voice firm. Because as soon as I see that idiot, I'm going to hurt him badly. Olivia suddenly stopped crying and gave him a sly smile. I've got an idea. What is it? Andrew asked, intrigued. They want to live here together, right? She said. Why don't we help them out? Andrew frowned, unsure. What do you mean? I mean, why don't we pack up their things and move them into here? She suggested, her tone filled with mischief. Andrew thought for a moment, and then grinned. I like that idea, but we better hurry. They'll be back in a day or two. Actually, Stephen said he'd be gone for a week after the conference. I'm willing to bet Emily will find an excuse to leave too. Suddenly, Andrew remembered the recorded conversation. Emily had asked him if he had everything ready for next week, but she hadn't specified what they had planned. Crap, he muttered, realizing she was probably right. I guess you're right. Still, I want her stuff out of my house as soon as possible. I'm with you, Olivia said. Let's meet back here in 3 hours. Sounds good, Andrew replied. I'll throw her things in trash bags. I'll be back in 3. See you then, Olivia said, getting up. As Andrew watched her leave, he couldn't help but notice her appearance. She was shorter than Emily, with a slender frame and a cute smile. He couldn't understand how Stephen had cheated on this woman. They drove to their respective homes, then returned 3 hours later, their cars loaded with bags of Emily and Stephen's belongings. They tossed the bags into the second bedroom, not bothering to care about anything breaking in the process. I didn't bother with Stephen's stuff, Olivia said nonchalantly. Me neither, Andrew laughed. They shared a high five, and then Andrew looked at her with a grin. I don't know about you, but I'm starving. Same here, she replied. I could really go for a big juicy burger. A big hearty cheeseburger sounds perfect, Andrew said. I know just the place, she said. Let me treat you. Leave it to me, Andrew replied. They drove toward the bar that Andrew and Samuel often visited. Once parked, Olivia looked up at the building. A bar? She asked, skeptical. Trust me, Andrew said. They make the best burgers around. You'll love it. All right, Olivia said, still unsure. Just don't go pouring me drinks and taking advantage of me. Andrew laughed. As tempting as it sounds, I wouldn't do that to you. Darn, she said, laughing too. They entered the bar and ordered beers, burgers, and fries. As they ate, they exchanged stories about their failed marriages. Olivia's story was strikingly similar to his. She had met Stephen in college, and they married soon after. But while she wanted children, he didn't. Stephen had started working at Global Realty, and Olivia had taken a job in accounts receivable at a home remodeling company. Are you a CPA? Andrew asked. She shook her head. No, I never got that far, but it's something I hope to do eventually. Andrew shared a bit about his own work. We're always looking for good people. If you send me your resume, maybe we can help each other out. I can do that, Mr. Carter, she replied, taking a bite of her burger. Just then, Andrew's phone rang. He saw it was Emily calling and answered in a neutral tone. Hello, he said. Hey, baby. Emily's voice slurred. She had clearly been drinking. What are you up to? Just at the bar having a burger, Andrew answered. Really? What's wrong with you? She asked. Guess what? I got the Best Salesman Award. I'm happy for you, he replied, keeping his tone flat. They want me to stay in Atlantic City next week to work with the agents, she continued. Andrew immediately knew she was lying. Isn't that great? They're even talking about promoting me to manager soon, she added. Andrew thought, of course, on her back. That's great, he said. What about our anniversary? It's coming up this Wednesday, she asked. I know, Andrew said, but I understand. Maybe we can celebrate next weekend. Don't worry about it, he added. I know how important your work is. I wouldn't want you to miss anything big. What's that supposed to mean? She asked. Nothing, he said, trying to keep it together. It's just that 10 years of marriage doesn't come around every day. But I understand how much your job means to you. Don't worry about it. Yes, my work is important, Emily said. But I thought you'd be happy for me. I'm very happy, Andrew said. Go work with your agents. Don't worry about me. I love you, she said. Yeah, me too, he replied coldly. Bye, she added before ending the call. Andrew looked over at Olivia. So that's that. Olivia shook her head. She really chose Stephen over your anniversary, she said, her hand resting on his. Andrew fought back tears. A person he barely knew seemed to care more about him than his own wife did. What a scoundrel, he muttered. I'm sorry, Olivia said quietly. Thanks, Andrew replied, attempting a weak smile. He pulled out Jerry's business card and dialed the private number. Jerry, he said when the older man answered. It's Andrew Carter. I just talked to Emily. She says she'll be in Atlantic City for another week. And you don't believe her? Jerry asked. Not for a second, Andrew replied. I was just working on your report. I'll have my team watch them and see what they're up to. We'll move forward with it, Jerry said. I've also got something else for you. Your wife and her lover spent the night together. We've got video footage of it. I'll send it over if you want, and it'll be in the full report. Sounds good, Jerry, Andrew said. Thanks. He ended the call and turned to Olivia. Well, tomorrow we'll find out what's really going on, he said. They spent the night together. My private investigator is going to send me the footage. Would you like to watch it with me? Olivia hesitated. Not really, she said, but I feel like I should. Andrew nodded. Let's head to my place then. After paying for their meal, they left the bar and drove to Andrew's house. By the time they settled into his office, the video had arrived in his email. Would you like something to drink before we watch this? Andrew asked. Sure, Olivia said. Coca-Cola, if you have it. I'll grab one for you, he replied, heading to the kitchen. He returned with 2 cold sodas, handing one to her. He started the video, and they both watched in silence as Emily and Stephen engaged in various intimate acts. Both Andrew and Olivia struggled to hold back tears as they saw their spouses enjoying each other's company. What followed was even worse. The pillow talk. So what do you think our spouses are doing now? Emily asked in the recording. If I know Olivia, she's probably watching some boring movie or reading one of her trivial books, Stephen said. Yeah, I get what you mean, Emily agreed. I bet Andrew's sitting there with his tedious spreadsheets or staring at stock reports, Stephen continued. You'd think he was trying to save the world or something. Heck, his dad's company sells tires. For goodness sake. What's so important about that? So what are you going to say to that fool after the awards banquet tomorrow? Stephen asked. I'll just tell him I have to stay in Atlantic City for a week to cover for the local reps. He'll believe it, Emily said. He'd believe anything I tell him. I could say the moon is made of green cheese, and he'd go along with it. And by the time he figures it out, we'll be on a beach in Maui. Stephen said, grinning. I can't wait to see you in that new swimsuit you bought. Olivia's face contorted with rage. Maui. I'm going to hurt him badly, she screamed. She turned to Andrew. Sorry for calling your wife promiscuous. You don't have to apologize, Andrew said coldly. I would have called her the same thing. They continued watching, and Stephen's voice came through again. What about your anniversary? Are you just going to blow it off? Maui's way more interesting than a night at a steakhouse, Emily said. I'll make it up to him later. You're so cold, you know that, Emily shrugged. It's just our 10th anniversary. There'll be others. I don't care about that, she added. I need you now. With that, they began again, and Andrew shut the video off. I've seen enough, Andrew said. Olivia nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. More than enough, she whispered. I'm meeting with a divorce lawyer on Monday, Andrew said. Do you want to come with me? Do you mind? Olivia asked quietly. Not at all, Andrew replied. Olivia broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Andrew put his arm around her and let her cry on his shoulder, fighting his own emotions. He wanted to cry too, but he held back, comforting her the best he could. Do you mind if I stay here tonight? Olivia asked. No, of course not. Stay as long as you need. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking. I can't believe I spent all those years with him. I fell for all his lies. I know exactly how you feel, Andrew replied. He led her upstairs to the master bedroom and found an old t-shirt for her to wear to bed. Olivia took it and went into the bathroom to change. While she was gone, Andrew changed into his pajamas, then climbed into bed. Olivia emerged from the bathroom wearing the long t-shirt, and Andrew almost gasped when he saw her. He had always thought Emily had nice legs, but Olivia's were the thinnest, most graceful legs he had ever seen. She smiled as she slid under the covers. Something wrong? She asked. Never seen a woman's legs before. None as perfect as yours. Andrew replied. Flattery will get you everywhere, mister. She teased, her voice light. He pulled her close, wrapping his arm around her and inhaling the soft scent of her hair. You're the only woman I've been in bed with for over 10 years, besides my wife, he said, his voice almost a whisper. And you're the only man I've been with, besides my husband, she replied, just as softly. They locked eyes, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. They drifted to sleep in each other's arms, waking up the next morning tangled together. Good morning, sleepyhead, Olivia said, her voice still drowsy. Andrew stirred and started to get out of bed to use the bathroom, but she added, You don't have to get up on my account. Good morning, beautiful, he replied, smiling. I'll be right back. After a quick trip to the bathroom, which was harder than usual due to the state of his body, he returned to the kitchen. Olivia had already cleaned up and was busy cooking scrambled eggs and bacon. Andrew checked the clock. It was 8:30 a.m. He watched her move around in his oversized t-shirt and felt a pang of nostalgia for the mornings when Emily used to make him breakfast. Dan, that smells amazing, he said, his stomach rumbling. Hope you don't mind me making myself at home in your kitchen, she said, glancing over her shoulder at him. Not at all, Andrew replied, feeling strangely comforted. I can't remember the last time someone made me breakfast. Emily never cooked for you, she asked, looking at him with a hint of curiosity. She did at first, he said. But after a while, she stopped, said it took too much time, and she had to clean up for her clients. Which, Olivia muttered, the words slipping out before she could stop herself. I agree, Andrew said dryly. Olivia plated a generous portion of bacon and eggs and set it in front of Andrew. He dove into the meal like he hadn't eaten in days. Dan, that was good. You cook like this every morning? He asked, looking up at her. Whenever I can, Olivia replied with a grin. Just then, Andrew's phone buzzed, breaking their quiet moment. He glanced at the screen and saw Jerry's name flashing. He picked it up. Good morning, Jerry, Andrew answered. Working on a Sunday, huh? Jerry's voice came through, accompanied by a laugh. More than I'd like, Andrew replied. What's up? Just wanted to let you know your wife and her lover boarded their flight out of Atlantic City just before 6 a.m. They had a short layover in San Francisco, but they're on their way to Maui now. They'll land in about 5 hours. I've got all the flight details if you want them. Yeah, I'll take it, Andrew said, his tone cold and controlled. They're on National Airlines Flight 45, Jerry continued. I have a contact in Maui who will track them when they land. Thanks, Jerry, Andrew said, jotting down the details. He hung up and turned to Olivia. Well, here we go. They're on their way to Maui, he said, his voice flat. Meanwhile, Emily was sitting back in her seat on the plane, staring out the window as the landscape below changed. The plane was cruising over the Pacific Ocean. This is it, she thought, a mix of excitement and guilt stirring inside her. She glanced over at Stephen, who was already asleep beside her. For a moment, her mind wandered back to her marriage with Andrew. She had been married for 10 years, and as she closed her eyes, the weight of what she was doing hit her hard. She thought about all the lies, the secrecy, and the betrayal of a man who had trusted her completely. The guilt overwhelmed her for a moment, but then she pushed it aside. This is for me, she reasoned. It has to be. Eventually no one will know and everything will go back to normal. Andrew won't find out. We'll keep going just like before, and someday we'll retire together. Her first lie had been telling Andrew she couldn't have children. The truth was, she didn't want them. The thought of motherhood wasn't appealing to her at all, so she made up a story about medical issues. Andrew believed her, and eventually, they both agreed not to have kids. She had complications with birth control, tried different methods, but in the end, she ended up pregnant twice. The first time she had an abortion. She paid for it with her own money, quietly and discreetly. Andrew was none the wiser. The second time she got pregnant by Stephen. Again, she had an abortion, and again she paid for it herself. She hoped Andrew would never find out about either of them. As for the affairs, she had been faithful for the first 7 years of her marriage. But one day, everything changed. She met a charming, wealthy client, and before she knew it, they were in bed together. It wasn't something she did often, just a handful of times over the next year and a half. But it felt exciting, and she didn't feel bad about it. She justified it by thinking, if others can do it and get away with it, why can't I? Andrew didn't need to know. She still loved him, and what he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. Then there was Stephen. He was everything Andrew wasn't. Andrew was careful, calculating, a man with a set plan. Stephen, on the other hand, was spontaneous, living for the moment. While Andrew had spent his life working for his father, Stephen was carefree, with no set career or future plans. But it wasn't just the differences in their lives that drew her to Stephen. It was how he made her feel. Where Andrew took his time and focused on her pleasure, Stephen was quick, demanding, and raw. At first, their secret meetings were held at motels and hotels around town, or occasionally at the house they were trying to sell. But over time, she grew uneasy about being caught. Someone might see them and alert either Andrew or Stephen's wife, Olivia. The tipping point came one night when Andrew expressed his worry that their relationship was slipping away. Panicked, she pulled back from Stephen, distancing herself emotionally. For a short time, she threw herself into her marriage, but it didn't last long. Stephen, eager to start fresh, suggested they find a way to be together more openly, but she feared Andrew might discover their affair. She needed a plan, so she decided to buy her own apartment. That way, she'd have a private space for her and Stephen, separate from her life with Andrew. Stephen had suggested using the bed she shared with Andrew, but she refused. Even though Andrew could be boring and predictable, she still had lingering feelings for him. Besides, the two of them had long agreed to file their taxes separately, which meant she could move out and still maintain some financial benefits. She convinced herself it was a win-win situation. This thinking eventually led her to plan a trip to Maui with Stephen. She took a week off from work, telling everyone she was going with Andrew after their annual company conference. Meanwhile, Stephen informed his wife of his own travel plans for the week. Emily, however, lied to Andrew, telling him she was heading to Atlantic City. She was confident he wouldn't suspect anything. After all, a few phone calls would cover her tracks. Sure, she'd missed their 10th wedding anniversary, but she promised herself she'd make it up to him when she returned, keeping the secret safe. As the plane soared toward Maui, she smiled, thinking about the trip ahead. Stephen had bought her a daring swimsuit for the occasion, one that left little to the imagination. He planned to watch her change on the beach, and even imagined how it might feel to be the center of her attention in that moment. The thought made her feel warm and excited, and she almost gave in to the temptation to indulge in self-pleasure right then, though she resisted, deciding to wait until later. Checking her phone for any messages or calls, she wasn't surprised to see no text from Andrew. He hated texting and preferred talking on the phone or in person. She chuckled to herself as the plane shook when they hit some turbulence. The nose of the plane dipped, and the engine noise changed. Suddenly, she realized something was wrong when she saw the frantic movement of passengers around her. The plane was plummeting. Panic surged through her and her heart raced. Oh my goodness, this is it. We're going to crash. I'm going to die. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling, and the screams of other passengers filled the air. As the flight attendants rushed to prepare everyone for impact, Emily looked at her phone, tears streaming down her face. She made one final decision. Meanwhile, Andrew and Olivia had just finished breakfast and were cleaning up the kitchen when they sat down to discuss their next steps regarding their unfaithful spouses. Andrew found himself impressed by Olivia's practical and methodical approach to the situation. At that moment, he felt closer to her than he had to Emily in months. Just as he returned with a fresh cup of coffee, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Emily. "Hello," he answered, putting it on speaker. "Andrew, are you?" Emily's voice came through, strained and filled with background noise. It sounded like a commotion was happening on her end. "Yeah, Emily, what's going on?" he asked, concern creeping into his voice. Not time. Airplane. Down." Her words were abruptly cut off by static and shouting. Before Andrew could process what was happening, the line went dead. He stared at the phone in shock, then tried calling her back. The call went straight to voicemail. "Try Stephen," he told Olivia, who immediately grabbed her phone and called him. She came back a moment later, shaking her head. "Straight to voicemail," she said. Andrew rushed to his home office, where he searched for the airline's number. After a few attempts, he finally reached someone who confirmed that they were investigating reports of a plane going down. He provided the details of both Emily's and Stephen's flights, leaving his contact information and asking to be notified when more details emerged. He also passed on Olivia's information. He quickly checked online, but there was no breaking news yet. They walked back to the living room, where Andrew flipped through TV channels, but there was nothing yet. His phone buzzed again, and he was soon greeted by a news report about a national airlines flight to Maui crashing into the Pacific Ocean. There were no specifics, just confirmation of the tragedy. Olivia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my goodness," she whispered, eyes wide with shock. Andrew held her tightly, hoping against hope that Emily had somehow survived. Despite everything she had done, he didn't want her to die. An hour later, Andrew's phone rang again, interrupting their silent vigil. He turned off the TV and answered. "Mr. Carter?" a woman's voice asked. "That's me," he said. "I'm calling to confirm that your wife's flight has crashed," she said, her tone somber. "I don't have any further details right now, but we'll get back to you as soon as we have more information." "Thank you," Andrew replied, his voice thick. He ended the call and hugged Olivia again, tears welling in his eyes. Just later, Olivia's phone rang, and she received the same confirmation. Soon after, his father called. Andrew wasn't surprised. His parents often reached out when a big news story broke. "Hey, Andrew," his father said. "Hey, Dad," Andrew replied. "How are you doing? I just got back from church. Did you see the news about the plane crash?" "Yeah, I saw it," Andrew said. "It's terrible. By the way, how's Emily doing? Isn't she on her way back from Atlantic City?" His father asked. The news sank in hard. "She's not doing so well right now, Dad. She was on that plane that crashed." "What?" his father gasped. "What was she doing in Maui without you?" "She was with her boyfriend," Andrew said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry to hear that, son," his father said, his voice filled with sympathy. "Listen, take some time off and deal with all of this. I'll talk to Mike and let him know. If you need anything, just give me a call." "Thanks, Dad," Andrew said softly, his mind reeling. Andrew ended the call, his emotions swirling. He felt sadness knowing that Emily was likely gone. At the same time, anger burned within him, not just at her for the affair, but also at himself for not standing up to her. Oddly, he wasn't upset by the fact that her passing meant there would be no divorce, but the realization hit him quickly. He would have to handle all of Emily's final expenses, including the apartment. Damn it, he thought. He turned to Olivia, wondering how she would react to everything. What would you do next? A sudden idea popped into his mind, and he walked over to her. "Olivia, how about you sell your place and move in here with me?" She looked up, her eyes red from tears. "Are you serious?" she asked. "Yeah, Andrew," he replied. "I've got an extra room upstairs, and you're going to have a lot to manage over the next few months. Maybe we can help each other through it." She paused, thinking it over. "Why not?" she said finally. "But there's one condition." "What's that?" he asked, puzzled. "You let me be intimate with you," she said softly. Andrew blinked in surprise. Everything was moving so quickly, and he wasn't sure if this was the right choice. But then he pushed the doubt aside. "Are you sure?" he asked. "It's been years since I felt truly comfortable with my husband," she admitted. "But last night, for the first time in a long time, I felt satisfied. Is that okay with you?" "It's more than okay," Andrew said, feeling an unexpected rush of relief. "Great," she said. "I'll go back to the house, grab my things, and be back tonight." "I'll be here," he replied. Once she left, Andrew made a call to Lucy, the office manager where Emily worked. "Hello," Lucy answered. "Hi, Lucy, it's Andrew Carter." "Oh, hi, Andrew," she replied. "How was Maui?" Andrew hesitated, his throat tight. "I don't know. I heard it's nice there." Lucy was confused. "I thought you two were going after the company meeting." "No, Andrew," he corrected. "Emily went to Maui, but not with me. She went with Stephen." "What?" Lucy exclaimed, clearly stunned. "Yeah," Andrew said, "but neither of them made it. The plane they were on went down in the Pacific today." "Oh my goodness," Lucy whispered. "Do you know if there are any survivors?" "I don't think there are any survivors," Andrew said flatly. "I'm so sorry," Lucy said, her voice filled with sympathy. "I'll take care of the insurance paperwork. The company carries life insurance on all employees, so I'll need some information from the airline. Can you get that for me?" "Yeah, I'll get what I can," Andrew said, "if it's available elsewhere. But I have to ask, did you know about Emily and Stephen?" Lucy sighed. "I had a feeling something was going on. There were rumors, but we don't really discuss that kind of thing." "I see," Andrew muttered. "That's all I needed to know. I'll be in touch. Thanks for letting me know, Lucy, and once again, I'm sorry for your loss," Lucy said before ending the call. Later that evening, while Andrew and Olivia were watching TV, a breaking news report flashed on the screen. It showed footage of the plane's final moments captured by a nearby cargo plane. The video showed the doomed flight spiraling out of control, plummeting nose first before disintegrating on impact with the ocean. The crew of the cargo plane had turned around to search for survivors, but found none. Although they did recover bodies and a large amount of luggage, including Emily and Stephen's belongings, neither of their bodies were found. In the months that followed, life for Andrew and Olivia was a blur of activity. Olivia moved in with him and sold her house. Andrew was left to deal with the aftermath of Emily's apartment, which held nothing of value to him. He donated everything to charity and eventually sold the apartment, recovering the original amount Emily had paid for it. Both Andrew and Olivia received $500,000 insurance payouts from Global Realty for the loss of their spouses. Olivia quickly settled in, and they began to remove every trace of Emily from Andrew's life. Photos were tossed, knickknacks were packed away, and all the furniture was replaced, especially the bed. Family members took what they wanted, and the rest, along with the cars, was either sold, donated, or scrapped. Then came the long process of sorting through Emily's bank accounts. After months of paperwork, Andrew finally received a check for about $250,000. Meanwhile, lawyers began circling, hoping to cash in on the accident. An investigation later revealed that the flight crew had misinterpreted warning signals and made critical errors. The plane had been descending at a terrifying rate minus 12,000 feet per minute, before it crashed into the ocean at around 135 miles per hour. The whole descent lasted just over 3 minutes. Andrew couldn't help but imagine how miserable those last moments must have been for Emily, especially as she realized the enormity of the situation. In his mind, it was too little, too late. Fortunately, the airline settled with the families, providing each passenger's relatives with over $175,000. Andrew and Olivia ended up with more than $1.6 million. After taxes and other deductions, they still had a sizable fortune. With no bodies recovered, no funeral was held for Emily or Stephen. Andrew and Olivia, however, hosted small memorials for their families. Neither of them shed a tear for their late spouses. 3 months later, Olivia left her job and moved in with Andrew permanently. By this point, their bond had deepened into a passionate relationship. One evening, while they were out for dinner at an Oklahoma roadhouse, Andrew took a deep breath, got down on one knee, and proposed. Olivia gasped in joy, and the surrounding diners cheered. "It's about time you made an honest partner of me," she whispered. Andrew grinned. "Why?" "Because you're going to be a daddy," she replied. Overcome with emotion, he kissed her passionately. "I love you so much," he murmured. "I love you more," she answered. "Just one favor." "What's that?" he asked, still smiling. "Please don't ask me to fly anywhere," she said with a laugh. Andrew chuckled, pulling her close. "Don't worry, honey. I'm done with flying for a while."